let's start this off. We're going to do the top 10 comics you need to own on VeVe. These are the comics you should have in your collection. Number 10, Journey into Mystery, number 85. The first NFT appearance of a Stan Lee Jack Kirby comic. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby are synonymous with Marvel Comics. They created Marvel Comics, and having the first NFT with one of their collaborations is pretty big. And it's also the first appearance of Loki, which that's actually a pretty big deal. Loki's still a pretty big character in the comics and on the movies. Number 9, New Mutants 98. Yeah, according to Go Collect, it's the 15th hottest comic at the moment. New Mutants 98. It's the first appearance of Deadpool, and Deadpool may cool off here and there, but Deadpool's not going anywhere. This is a solid one to have in your collection. Number 8, we're doing Daredevil number 1. Matt Murdock being reintroduced into the MCU, or actually introduced into the MCU for the first time. They've confirmed that the characters from the Netflix series are now part of the MCU. So the Netflix Daredevil series is now part of the MCU canon, basically. They are saying they're the same characters from that show. And his first appearance, Daredevil number 1. And the character's only going to get hotter from here. Number 7, we're doing Ultimate Fallout 4. You get the Into the Spider-Verse movie coming out. You have Miles Morales being hinted at in the MCU, and they will be introducing him into the MCU. I think we're at the peak for Peter Parker. There's no further you can take Peter Parker. This last movie was like the biggest you can get with Peter Parker, honestly. But Miles Morales, you haven't even touched the surface of that character yet. Miles Morales is going to be the Spider-Man going forward. Eventually, Peter Parker is no longer going to be in the comics, and it's going to be Miles Morales. And you have a whole generation that grew up with Miles as their Spider-Man. So, Ultimate Fallout 4. It's also, I believe it was the 8th hottest comic in the physical world currently. So it's still got attention, and it's still got the people are wanting it still. It's not cooling off. Number 6, Amazing Spider-Man number 1. I believe it was a 5.0 copy. Sold for $28,000 a couple weeks ago. Still a big book. Peter Parker is still a big character. He's not going anywhere for a long time. I just think we're at the peak of his popularity. But that doesn't mean it's going to drop off tomorrow. So yeah, Amazing Spider-Man number 1. First solo series for Spider-Man. Not his first appearance. Number 5, we're doing Avengers number 8. Having such a low count of only 10,000 out there. It's the first appearance of Kang the Conqueror. And if you're following the MCU, Kang is going to be one of the next main villains in the MCU. Kang is just getting started. He's a character. He'll probably rival, he might even surpass Thanos in the movies. So, and only being limited to only 10,000 copies. This will be a big one. This will be a big one in the future. So Avengers number 8. That's number 5. Number 4, 4.0 graded copy of this comic. Sold a couple of weeks ago. $26,300. This is a big book, and it still has a lot of demand from the collector community. And it's only going to get hotter when these characters get introduced to the MCU. Talking about Fantastic Four, number 1. This is it. This is the start of it all. This is the start of the Marvel Universe. It all started in Fantastic Four, number 1. Collaboration between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It's always going to be valued. It's an important comic in the history of comics. It is probably one of the 5 most important comics ever published. Fantastic Four, number 1. Number 3 is Marvel Comics, number 1. Why is that not number 1? Because it's not part of the comic book collector lexicon. It's a comic everybody knows, comic book everybody loves, and it's cool, and people are going to be buying it for the historical value. But for collectors, it doesn't hold real significant value to a lot of modern collectors. Because it's a book most of us have probably never even seen the book. So it's not something we've ever aspired to have. It's not a essential key for anything modern. It's a cool book. It's a historical book. And are people that highly value it, but the modern day average collector, they don't care about Marvel Comics #1. And being the first NFT on here, once you can't get it on the market, it's going to be a prized book. Don't get me wrong. It's just not going to be the hot book everybody's chasing for the week, ever. It's just going to be the book you hold to say you have it. Bragging rights, really. Number 2, Amazing Fantasy 252. Number 10 on the hot comics list on Go Collect at the moment for physical comics. Still a highly in-demand comic, still a highly sought-after, highly wanted comic from collectors. Yeah, and there's 1,000 of them on VeVe. Again, I talked about this in another video. I don't really need to say too much more. Number 1 comic I think you should have in your collection on VeVe. Fantastic Four, number 5. First appearance of Doctor Doom. Why do I have that at number 1? I think once introduced into the MCU with the Marvel machine behind him, I think Doctor Doom's popularity will rival Darth Vader. For a whole new generation, Doctor Doom will be their Darth Vader. And look at how sought after Darth Vader collectibles are. Doctor Doom is about to become that for a whole new generation. I truly believe that. And that's why I think Fantastic Four, number 5, is a great comic to get. In the physical world, there are no 9.8 graded copies. 4 or 5.0 graded copy just sold for $20,000 in the past couple weeks. This is a big comic that people will put out big money for, and there just aren't very many in good condition on the market to begin with. The people that have them don't part with them. This is a coveted book, and it's only going to get more coveted as the years go on. This character really makes an appearance in the MCU. But yeah, those are the 10 comics I think you should have on VeVe in your collection.